The stars burned cold and distant as Kelhari Prime faced its darkest hour. In the great crystal halls beneath the planet's surface, 7 different insect-like species gathered in emergency council. Their delicate wings caught the bioluminescent light that pulsed from the living walls. Fear filled the air like a bitter scent. High Coordinator Zix Thera stood at the center of the circular chamber. Her forearms trembled as she activated the holographic display. The image showed their once beautiful galaxy now marked with growing patches of absolute darkness. These were the dead zones where the Void Swarm had fed. 17 more systems have gone silent, she announced. Her voice carried the clicking undertones that marked her as one of the Mantis Kelhari. The swarm consumed everything. Planets, moons, space stations. Even the asteroids are gone. The other council members shifted nervously. Representative Humbar from the Beetle Kelhari clan buzzed his wings in distress. How is this possible? Our bioships should have been able to escape. They are faster than anything we have ever seen. Zixthara touched another control. The display showed recordings from the last transmission received from the Outer Rim colonies. Crystalline creatures moved through space like living asteroids. They had no ships, no technology that anyone could understand. They simply absorbed everything they touched and grew larger. The swarm does not hunt like predators, explained Science Coordinator Velinth. Her WASP Kelhari heritage made her voice high and sharp. They consume like a plague. They take the matter and energy from everything and use it to create more of themselves. They are not evil. They are simply hungry. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Hungry. The Void Swarm had appeared at the edge of their territory 6 months ago. At first it seemed like a small problem. Space was vast and dangerous creatures sometimes emerged from the dark between stars. But this was different. This grew stronger with every meal. What do our allies say? Asked General Kriktar, the only military representative in their peaceful council. His warrior Kelhari species had not fought a real war in over 1,000 years. But they still remembered the old ways. Zix Thara's antenna drooped. The Zentari Empire says it is not their concern. They have closed their borders and will not allow refugees through their space. The Nexus Collective offered to study the swarm if we provide them with live specimens. The Ethereal Dominion says this is a test we must face alone. Silence filled the chamber. The Kelhari Confederation had always been the peaceful neighbors in their corner of the galaxy. They traded knowledge for protection. They offered art and culture in exchange for military support. But when extinction came knocking, none of their supposed friends would answer. There must be someone, whispered Coordinator Flamara from the smallest clan. The Butterfly Kelhari. Her people were artists and dreamers, but even they could see the approaching end. In all the vast galaxy, someone must care if we live or die. General Kriktar stood up. His large frame cast shadows across the room. Then we broadcast to everyone. Every species, every system, every ship that can receive our signal. We offer everything we have. Our libraries, our art, our scientific discoveries. Everything in exchange for help. You mean? Zixthera paused. A general distress call? To the entire galaxy? Yes, we tell them what the swarm is. We show them what it does. We warn them that if it consumes us, it will only grow stronger. Maybe fear will motivate them where friendship could not. The council voted quickly. They had little time left. Long-range sensors showed the swarm had finished consuming the Outer Rim and was moving toward the middle colonies. At their current speed, they would reach Kelhari Prime in 3 months. The message went out that same day. It traveled on quantum channels, radio waves, hyperspace frequencies, and even biological signals that some species used. The message was simple but desperate. This is the Kelhari Confederation broadcasting on all frequencies. We face extinction from an entity we call the Void Swarm. It consumes all matter and energy, growing stronger with each system it devours. We have tried to fight and failed. We have tried to run and been caught. We now beg any civilized species for aid. In return, we offer our entire cultural and scientific heritage, please. If you do not help us, help yourselves. The swarm will not stop with us. The responses came quickly. Most were rejections. The Zentari Empire repeated that it was not their problem. The Nexus Collective again asked for specimens to study. The Ethereal Dominion sent philosophical meditations about accepting fate. Dozens of smaller species also declined. Some were too far away. Others were too weak. Many simply did not care about insect-like aliens they had never met. But then came a response that surprised everyone. This is the UES Normandy of the Human Stellar Navy. We received your distress call. We are 3 weeks out from your coordinates. Prepare to receive humanitarian aid and military assistance. Humanity stands with the Kelhari Confederation. Coordinator Velenth looked confused. Humans, I have never heard of this species. Are they part of the Galactic Council? Zixathara was already searching their databases. They appear to be a young species from System Sol. They were contacted by the Zentari Empire 50 years ago, but were deemed too primitive for full diplomatic relations. They are carbon-based bipeds from a single world called Earth. Primitive species offering military aid. General Kriktar buzzed with what might have been amusement. What could they possibly do that the great powers cannot? The answer came sooner than expected. Within hours of the first message, more transmissions arrived from human ships throughout their sector. Ship names like Revenge, Predator, and Warhammer. The humans were not sending just one vessel. They were sending a fleet. This is Admiral Sarah Chen commanding the 3rd Human Expeditionary Force, came another message. We have 47 ships en route to your position. We also have supply ships carrying medical aid, food, and temporary shelter materials. Do not lose hope. Help is coming. The Kelhari Council looked at each other with a mixture of gratitude and confusion. In all their long history, they had never heard of a species mobilizing so quickly to help strangers. Most civilized races took months or years to make such decisions. Perhaps, said Flimara quietly, we should learn more about these humans before they arrive. Velenth was already accessing what little information they had. The records are limited. They are a young species, only recently achieving faster-than-light travel. They have a single homeworld but have established colonies on several nearby planets. The Zentari described them as unusually aggressive for their development level. Aggressive? General Kriktar perked up. That might be exactly what we need. As if summoned by their conversation, another human transmission arrived. This one carried visual data, the screen filled with the image of a creature unlike anything in their databases. It stood upright on 2 legs, had only 2 arms, and its eyes faced forward like a predator. When it spoke, its mouth revealed flat teeth except for 4 sharp points. This is Captain James Morrison aboard the UES Retribution. We have reviewed your data on the Void Swarm. We are uploading tactical assessments and recommended defensive positions. We suggest you begin evacuation of non-essential personnel from border worlds immediately. We will hold the line until you are safe. The transmission ended, leaving the Kelhari in stunned silence. Somehow, without even seeing the swarm directly, these humans were already making military plans. They spoke of holding lines and tactical assessments as if war was as natural as breathing. Zixathara looked around the chamber at her fellow council members. They had begged the stars for help, and only these strange, aggressive mammals had answered. She wondered if they had just traded one monster for another, but as the swarm drew closer and their options dwindled, she decided it was a trade worth making. The human ships arrived like metal predators emerging from the darkness between stars. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the main view screen as Kelhari Prime grew larger ahead of them. The planet was beautiful in an alien way, with sprawling bio-cities that glowed softly beneath crystal domes. It looked peaceful, fragile. Admiral, we are receiving docking instructions from the Kelhari, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. They want us to use their organic docking ports. Chen studied the readings. The Kelhari technology was unlike anything in human databases. Their ships were grown rather than built, shaped like enormous insects with gossamer wings that somehow propelled them through space. Even their space stations looked alive, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Negative on the biological docking, Chen decided. We use our own airlocks. I do not want any of their organic systems interfacing with our ships until we know more about their technology. She had read the files during the 3-week journey. The Kelhari were peaceful traders and scholars. They had never fought a major war. Their entire military consisted of what they called defense coordinators, whose main job was directing traffic and preventing accidents. The shuttle bay of the UES Normandy opened to receive a Kelhari diplomatic vessel. Chen watched through security cameras as the alien ship settled onto the deck. It moved like a living thing, its walls breathing slowly. Atmospheric readings showed it was safe for humans, but something about the organic ship made her troops nervous. The airlock cycled and High Coordinator Zixathara entered with her diplomatic party. Chen met them in the conference room, accompanied by her senior staff. She tried not to stare at the aliens, but it was difficult. They looked like a mixture of different Earth insects scaled up to human size. Zixathara resembled a praying mantis, while her companions looked like beetles, wasps, and other creatures Chen could not immediately identify. Admiral Chen, Zixthera spoke through a translation device that made her clicking sounds into understandable English. We cannot express our gratitude for your response to our call for help. You are the only species in the galaxy that answered. That is unfortunate, but not surprising, Chen replied, gesturing for the aliens to sit. The conference room chairs had been modified to accommodate their different body shapes. Most civilized species prefer to avoid messy situations until they become unavoidable. Zixthera's antenna twitched. Messy situations? Wars, conflicts, anything that might damage their trade relationships or force them to make difficult choices. Chen activated the holographic display. Show me everything you know about this void swarm. For the next 2 hours, the Kelhari presented their data. Chen watched recordings of the swarm's attacks with growing interest. Her staff took notes on creature movement patterns, attack formations, and consumption rates. The aliens seemed disturbed by how clinically the humans analyzed the recordings. These creatures do not use technology, observed Commander Jackson, Chen's tactical officer. They are biological constructs, probably some kind of engineered organism. See how they coordinate? There is definitely a hive mind at work. Engineered by whom? Asked Dr. Martinez, the fleet's xenobiologist, unknown. Possibly extinct. What matters is how they hunt. Chen pointed to several formations on the screen. They move in predictable patterns. Wave attacks followed by consolidation phases. They are efficient but not creative. Zixthera's voice carried a note of horror. Admiral, these creatures have destroyed 17 star systems. Billions of lives have been lost. How can you speak of them so casually? Chen looked at the alien coordinator with genuine confusion, because panic serves no tactical purpose. If we are going to defeat them, we need to understand them as efficiently as possible. Defeat them? Whispered Valenth, the science coordinator. We tried to fight them. Our bioships were consumed in minutes. Our defensive systems were useless. That is because you fought them wrong, said Commander Jackson bluntly. You tried to run away or defend fixed positions. This enemy cannot be avoided or contained. It must be destroyed completely. The Kelhari delegation exchanged alarmed looks. General Kriktar leaned forward. You speak of destruction as if it is simple. How do you destroy something that consumes everything it touches? Chen smiled, and several of the aliens shuddered at the expression. Human smiles apparently looked threatening to insect-like beings. You use their strengths against them. They consume matter and energy to reproduce. That means they require specific conditions to function. Change the conditions and you change the outcome. What do you mean? Asked Zixthera. Dr. Martinez answered. We reviewed your data on swarm feeding patterns. They require complex organic compounds to trigger reproduction. Deny them those compounds and they starve. Provide them with the wrong compounds and they poison themselves. Chen nodded. We also identified weaknesses in their hive mind structure. Take out enough nodes and the entire network becomes confused. Confused enemies make mistakes. The room fell silent except for the gentle humming of the ship's systems. Finally, Flimara spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You are talking about deliberately killing them. All of them. Yes, Chen said without hesitation. This is war. The enemy wants to consume your entire species. The only rational response is to eliminate the enemy completely. But they are living beings, protested Valenth. Surely there must be some way to coexist, to find a solution that does not require genocide. Commander Jackson laughed, a harsh sound that made the aliens flinch. Coexist with something that eats planets? Doctor, these creatures do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They consume everything they encounter and move on to the next target. The only way to coexist with them is to be dead. Admiral Chen studied the alien faces around the table. She could see their discomfort with human attitudes toward warfare. It was not the first time she had encountered this reaction from peaceful species. Let me ask you a question, she said to Zixthera. If a predator was killing your children, would you try to reason with it or would you kill it? We would try to find another solution. Perhaps relocate the children to safety. And if the predator followed them, if it kept hunting no matter where you ran, Zixthera's antenna drooped. Then we would have no choice. Exactly. You have already tried running. You have already tried hiding. You have tried asking for help from your powerful neighbors. None of those solutions worked. We are your last option. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, General Kriktar spoke. What do you need from us? Chen's expression became businesslike again. Complete access to your sensor networks. Real-time data on swarm movements. Detailed maps of every system they have attacked. And most importantly, you need to stop thinking of this as a tragedy and start thinking of it as a hunt. A hunt? Zixthera sounded confused. The Void Swarm are apex predators in their environment, but they have never encountered humans before. They do not know that sometimes the prey hunts back. After the aliens left, Chen's senior staff remained in the conference room. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked troubled. Admiral, they seemed genuinely horrified by our approach. Are we sure this is the right way to handle first contact with a peaceful species? Chen considered the question carefully. Rodriguez, in 3 months the Void Swarm will reach Kelhari Prime. If we succeed, we save an entire civilization and gain valuable allies. If we fail because we were too gentle, everyone dies anyway. Which outcome serves peace better? Commander Jackson nodded grimly. Besides, they asked for help. They did not specify what kind of help. Dr. Martinez pulled up the biological scans of the Kelhari. They are genuinely peaceful. No natural weapons, no aggressive instincts, no military traditions. They have survived by being useful to stronger species. And now they will survive by allying with a stronger species that is willing to fight. Chen concluded. They begged the stars for help. We answered. How we help is our decision. She looked out the viewport at the beautiful, fragile world below. Soon it would be a battlefield. The Kelhari would learn that sometimes salvation came with claws and teeth. Sometimes the cavalry that rode to the rescue looked exactly like the monsters they feared. But that was a lesson for later. Right now, Chen had a war to plan and an enemy to study. The Void Swarm had never faced humans before. She intended to make sure it was a learning experience they would not survive. The Kelhari had never seen anything like the human war fleet that assembled in their space. Admiral Chen's 3rd Expeditionary Force was joined by the 5th Hunter-Killer Squadron and the 8th Heavy Assault Group. Nearly 200 human vessels took positions throughout the Kelhari system, and each one looked like it was designed for one purpose: destruction. High Coordinator Zixthara stood in the observation deck of Kelhari Prime's orbital station, watching the alien ships through the transparent bioplastic dome. The human vessels were angular and brutal, covered in armor plating and weapon arrays. They moved through space with mechanical precision, nothing like the flowing grace of Kelhari bioships. They are so ugly, whispered Flimara, standing beside her. The artist's sensibilities were clearly offended by the harsh lines and utilitarian design of human technology. Perhaps, said General Kriktar, but they look very effective. As if to prove his point, one of the human ships began deploying what they called orbital defense platforms. The massive structures unfolded like metal flowers, revealing weapons that could target objects across entire star systems. Within hours, the peaceful Kelhari system was transformed into an armed fortress. But the weapons were not the most disturbing part. The most disturbing part was the soldiers. Zixthara had met human naval officers and found them professional, if somewhat aggressive. But the ground troops that began arriving on transport ships were something else entirely. They moved like predators, their equipment designed for killing, their attitudes casual about violence that would horrify most civilized species. Ma'am, reported one of her aides, the human ground commander is requesting a meeting. General Marcus Webb arrived at the orbital station wearing full combat armor. The powered suit made him look even more intimidating than normal humans. And when he removed his helmet, his scarred face and cold eyes made the Kelhari delegates nervous. Coordinator Zixthara, he said without preamble, we need to discuss civilian evacuation procedures. Of course, General. We have transport ships ready to move non-essential personnel to our inner colonies. Webb shook his head. Not evacuation from the planet. Evacuation from the entire system. When the swarm arrives, this whole region is going to become a kill zone. Valenth, the science coordinator, looked confused. But Admiral Chen said you would hold the line here. Protect our homeworld. We will hold the line. But holding a line in space combat means using weapons that make large areas uninhabitable for extended periods. Radiation, bioweapons, gravity distortions. Your civilians need to be far away when that happens. The casual way he mentioned bioweapons and gravity distortions made Zixthara's mandibles click nervously. General, surely such extreme measures are not necessary. Perhaps if we could find a way to communicate with the swarm. Webb's laugh was harsh and humorless. Coordinator, I have reviewed all your data on swarm behavior. These things do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They eat everything they encounter and make more of themselves. The only message they understand is force. But to use weapons that poison entire star systems, better than letting the swarm consume them. Webb interrupted. Dead space can be cleaned up eventually. Consumed space is gone forever. Over the following weeks, the Kelhari watched in growing alarm as humans prepared for war with an efficiency that seemed almost mechanical. Entire asteroid fields were mined for materials. Dead planets were converted into ammunition factories. Biological research stations appeared around gas giants, developing what the humans euphemistically called selective pathogens. The most disturbing development was the arrival of the Hunter Corps. These were human soldiers who had volunteered for genetic modification to better fight in extreme environments. They were faster, stronger, and more aggressive than baseline humans. They also seemed to enjoy their work in a way that made peaceful species deeply uncomfortable. Captain Sarah Reyes was typical of the Hunter Corps. She met with Kelhari military advisors to discuss swarm behavior patterns, and her enthusiasm for the coming battle was obvious. The beauty of fighting a hive mind, she explained to General Kriktar, is that once you figure out their patterns, they cannot adapt quickly. Individual creatures might learn, but the collective takes time to process new information. You speak as if you have fought such creatures before, Kriktar observed. Not exactly like this, but humans have dealt with swarm-type enemies. Insect plagues, viral outbreaks, AI networks that went rogue. The principle is always the same. Identify the control nodes and destroy them faster than they can be replaced. She pulled up a holographic display showing swarm attack formations from the Kelhari database. See these larger creatures at the center of each group? Those are command nodes. Take them out and the smaller creatures lose coordination. Take out enough nodes and the entire local swarm becomes confused. But how do you reach the command nodes when they are protected by thousands of smaller creatures? Reyes smiled, and like all human smiles, it made the aliens uncomfortable. You do not fight through them. You make them come to you. The strategy the humans developed was unlike anything in Kelhari military history. Instead of trying to defend fixed positions, they created what they called killing fields, areas of space designed to channel swarm movements into predetermined patterns. They used everything from gravity mines to biological lures that would attract the creatures to specific locations. When the void swarm finally arrived at the edge of the Kelhari system, it was larger than anyone had expected. Long-range sensors detected over 10,000 individual creatures ranging in size from small fighters to massive command ships bigger than space stations. The swarm moved exactly as the humans had predicted. They approached in waves with smaller creatures scouting ahead and larger ones following behind. They showed no caution, no tactical thinking beyond their basic consumption patterns. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Normandy as the enemy entered their trap. All units, this is actual. Weapons free. Execute Alpha Strike. What followed was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships did not try to engage the swarm in honorable combat. They used ambush tactics, hit-and-run attacks, and weapons designed to cause maximum psychological impact on a hive mind. The first wave of attacks targeted the swarm's scout creatures with biological weapons that did not kill them immediately. Instead, the infected creatures returned to the main swarm carrying pathogens designed to disrupt the hive mind's communication network. The second wave used gravity weapons to trap large groups of creatures in artificial wells, then hit them with antimatter bombs that left nothing behind but empty space. The third wave was the most disturbing. Hunter Corps soldiers in specially designed ships actually boarded some of the larger swarm creatures, fighting hand-to-hand with the aliens inside their own bodies. The humans treated it like an extreme sport, competing to see who could disable command nodes fastest. Captain Reyes led one of these boarding parties, and her combat recordings were broadcast back to the fleet. The Kelhari who watched them were horrified by the obvious pleasure she took in hunting through the organic corridors of a living ship, stalking the nerve clusters that controlled swarm behavior. Contact front, she shouted over the comm system as her team encountered swarm defenders. Multiple hostiles engaging now. The sound of weapons fire and human laughter filled the comm channel. To the peaceful Kelhari, it sounded like madness. To the humans, it sounded like another day at the office. Within 6 hours, the first swarm attack wave was completely destroyed. The creatures had never encountered an enemy that fought back with such systematic brutality. Their hive mind had no response patterns for opponents who seemed to enjoy the violence. But the humans were just getting started. Phase 1 complete, Admiral Chen announced to the fleet. All units rearm and prepare for Phase 2. Let's show these things what happens when they pick on someone who fights back. In the observation deck of the orbital station, Zixithara watched the human ships regrouping for their next attack. The Void Swarm was retreating toward the outer system, probably trying to regroup and adapt to human tactics. She wondered if the creatures were capable of fear. If they were about to learn what it felt like to be hunted by something even more efficient at killing than they were. The humans had come to help the Kelhari, and they were keeping their promise. But watching them work, Zixithara could not shake the feeling that they had traded one kind of monster for another. The only question was which monsters they would prefer to have as neighbors when the war was over. News of the human victory against the Void Swarm's first attack spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light. For the first time in recorded history, someone had not just survived an encounter with the swarm, but had actually driven them back. The implications sent shockwaves through every major civilization. In the crystal spires of the Zentari Empire's capital world, Emperor Vashti summoned his military advisors for an emergency session. The holographic display showed recordings of human ships systematically destroying swarm creatures with weapons that defied galactic convention. "Explain to me," the Emperor said, his voice carrying the dangerous calm that preceded imperial wrath, "how a primitive species possesses weapons that our intelligence services have never encountered." Admiral Corvesh, head of Zentari Naval Intelligence, struggled to maintain his composure. "Your Majesty, our files on humanity are limited. They were classified as a minor threat 50 years ago. We focused our attention on more established powers." "A minor threat?" Emperor Vashti gestured at the recordings. "They are using biological weapons, gravity manipulation, and what appears to be some form of antimatter weaponry. These technologies are restricted by the Galactic Peace Accords." "They never signed the Peace Accords, Your Majesty. They were not considered advanced enough to be included in galactic law." The Emperor's expression darkened. "And now they are operating freely in Kelhari space with enough firepower to sterilize entire systems. I want a full intelligence assessment on human capabilities, and I want it yesterday." Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. The Nexus Collective, a union of artificial intelligences that prided themselves on logical thinking, found their predictive models failing when they tried to analyze human tactics. "The humans fight without logic," reported Processor Unit 7743 to the collective's governing council. "They use excessive force when minimal force would suffice. They deploy weapons that cause unnecessary destruction. They seem to enjoy combat in a way that defies rational behavior." "Enjoyment is not logical," observed Primary Unit. "One non-calculate the probability that this enjoyment is a tactical advantage." The processing pause lasted, or 3 seconds, an eternity in AI terms. Probability approaches unity. Enemy forces show measurably decreased effectiveness when facing opponents who display enthusiasm for combat. The psychological impact appears to disrupt hive mind coordination. Fascinating. These humans have weaponized their own irrationality. Meanwhile, in the ancient temples of the ethereal dominion, beings of pure energy contemplated the disturbing implications of humanity's emergence. For 10,000 years, they had guided galactic civilization toward peace and enlightenment. The humans represented something they had thought extinct, a species that had advanced technologically while retaining their predatory instincts. "They should have evolved past violence," whispered the thought form known as serenity. "All species abandon warfare as they achieve true civilization." "Perhaps," replied another thought form called wisdom, "that is why they succeed where we fail. They have kept the tools we discarded." Back in Kelhari space, the price of human assistance was becoming clear. The second wave of swarm attacks had been even more devastating for the invaders, but human methods were leaving the star system scarred. 3 planets were now uninhabitable due to residual radiation from human weapons. The asteroid belt had been completely strip-mined to provide raw materials for ammunition. Most disturbing of all, several gas giants now showed signs of biological contamination from human selective pathogens that were designed to poison swarm reproduction. High Coordinator Zixithara met with Admiral Chen aboard the human flagship to discuss the situation. The conference room's walls displayed tactical maps showing the current positions of both human and swarm forces. "Admiral, my science teams are concerned about the long-term effects of your weapons," Zixthara said carefully. "Some of them appear to be causing permanent damage to our star system." Chen studied the biological contamination reports without apparent concern. "The pathogens will break down naturally in about 50 years. The radiation will clear up in maybe a century. Your great-grandchildren will be able to resettle those worlds." 50 years? Velinth sounded horrified. "Admiral, those were some of our most important research colonies. Generations of scientific work have been lost. Better than losing your entire species," Commander Jackson pointed out. "Would you prefer to have contaminated worlds or no worlds at all?" The logic was unassailable, but somehow felt wrong to the peaceful Kelhari. General Kriktar tried a different approach. "We understand the necessity, Admiral, but surely there must be less destructive methods available." Chen leaned back in her chair, studying the alien faces around the table. "General, let me explain something about human military doctrine. We do not fight to achieve acceptable outcomes. We fight to achieve total victory. The Void Swarm is an existential threat to your species. That means we use whatever level of force is necessary to eliminate that threat completely. But the collateral damage will heal. Your species will survive to rebuild. That is what matters." Dr. Martinez, the fleet's xenobiologist, added more details. "We have identified the source of the swarm's rapid reproduction. They require specific complex proteins that they extract from living worlds. Our biological weapons target those proteins, making it impossible for them to breed in this system." "You are poisoning entire planets to prevent reproduction?" Flimara's voice carried a note of horror. "We are sterilizing the environment against an invasive species," Martinez corrected. "It is the most efficient solution." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the human fleet. Captain Reyes appeared on the main screen, her face flushed with excitement and her armor stained with something that might have been swarm ichor. "Admiral, we have successfully breached the command ship designated Target Alpha. My team has captured what appears to be a primary coordination node. The local swarm network is in complete disarray." Chen smiled with obvious satisfaction. "Outstanding work, Captain. What is the status of the node?" "Still functional but isolated from the network. Dr. Martinez might want to take a look at this thing. It appears to be some kind of organic quantum computer." After the transmission ended, Zixthara looked at the human officers with growing unease. "You captured a living swarm command node. What do you intend to do with it?" "Study it," Dr. Martinez replied. "Learn how their hive mind functions. Develop better ways to disrupt their coordination. And then we dissect it to see how it works," Chen said matter-of-factly. The casual way she spoke of vivisecting a sentient creature made the Kelhari delegates exchange alarmed glances. Velinth tried to protest. "Admiral, if the node is truly sentient, would that not be considered torture under galactic law?" Commander Jackson laughed harshly. "Galactic law does not apply to creatures trying to commit genocide. Besides, the swarm never showed any concern for the sentience of their victims." "Two wrongs do not make a right," Flimara whispered. "No," Chen agreed. "But sometimes one right can prevent a million wrongs. The information we gain from studying that node could save countless species from swarm attacks, and the future General Kriktar found himself in the uncomfortable position of agreeing with the humans while being horrified by their methods. The Admiral has a point. If studying the node can help us understand the swarm better, then we do whatever is necessary," Chen finished. "This is war, not a philosophy debate. Moral luxury is something you can afford after your species survives." The meeting ended with the Kelhari delegates deeply troubled by what they had learned. Human assistance was effective beyond their wildest hopes, but it came with a cost that went beyond simple destruction. The humans were changing the very nature of their star system, turning it into something harder and more dangerous. As they prepared to leave the human flagship, Zixthara asked one final question. "Admiral, when this is over, when the swarm is defeated, what happens then?" Chen considered the question seriously. "Then you rebuild. You remember what almost happened to your species, and you make sure you're never helpless again. And humanity? Will you simply leave? That depends on you, Coordinator. We have invested significant resources in defending your space. It would be inefficient to simply abandon those investments." The implications hung in the air like a threat. The humans had saved the Kelhari, But salvation had come with strings attached. As they returned to their own ships, the Kelhari delegation wondered if they had traded one form of conquest for another. They had begged the stars for help, and humanity had responded. But as they watched human ships patrol their system with the casual confidence of conquerors, they began to wonder if the cure might be worse than the disease. The question was no longer whether they would survive the void swarm. The question was what they would become under human protection. The final battle began when the void swarm's main fleet arrived at Kelhari Prime. Long-range sensors detected over 50,000 creatures, including the massive queen ship that served as the central node of their hive mind. The alien vessel was the size of a small moon, its organic surface pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Normandy, watching the approaching armada with the calm expression of a predator sizing up prey. Her fleet had grown during the weeks of fighting. More human ships had arrived from Earth and the colonies, drawn by reports of the largest military engagement in human history. "Final count, Admiral," reported Commander Jackson. 53,000 individual creatures ranging from fighter size to capital ship class. The Queen ship is approximately 1,200 kilometers in diameter. Weapons status: all ships report ready. The planet crackers are in position and fully charged. Chen nodded. Planet crackers were humanity's most devastating weapons, originally designed for large-scale mining operations. They could split asteroids, shatter moons, or in this case, destroy something the size of a small world. The Kelhari had been horrified when they learned humans possessed such weapons. The rest of the galaxy did not even know they existed. "This is Admiral Chen to all units," she announced over the fleet communication system. "Today we end the Void Swarm threat permanently. They have never faced an enemy that fights back with equal ferocity. Show them what happens when apex predators hunt apex predators." In the observation deck of Kelhari Prime's orbital station, Zixthara and her fellow coordinators watched the approaching battle with a mixture of hope and terror. The swarm fleet was larger than anything they had ever imagined, but the human response was equally overwhelming. Nearly 400 human ships took positions throughout the system, supported by thousands of automated weapons platforms, drone swarms, and biological warfare dispensers. The peaceful Kelhari system had been transformed into a fortress designed for one purpose: total annihilation of anything that entered it. "They are going to destroy everything," whispered Flimara, watching the tactical displays. "The swarm, the system, perhaps even us." General Kriktar studied the human formations with professional interest. "Look at their positioning. They are not trying to protect specific locations. They are creating overlapping fields of fire to ensure nothing escapes." The swarm attacked in their traditional wave formation, smaller creatures leading the charge while larger ones followed behind. But this time, the humans were ready with a coordinated response that utilized every lesson learned from previous encounters. The first wave of swarm creatures hit a wall of biological weapons, specifically designed to target their reproduction systems. Automated dispensers released clouds of engineered viruses that caused the creatures to turn on each other as their hive mind connection degraded. The second wave encountered gravity traps that collapsed entire squadrons into artificial black holes, while hunter-killer drones picked off survivors with precision that bordered on artistic. The third wave faced something the swarm had never encountered: humans who had been genetically modified for space combat. Captain Reyes led a squadron of Hunter Corps soldiers in powered armor, using personal jetpacks to engage swarm creatures in direct combat within the vacuum of space. "This is Hunter Leader," Reyes reported over the comm system, her voice filled with the adrenaline rush of close combat. Multiple targets engaged. "These things are tougher than they look, but they do not expect prey that fights back." The sound of weapons fire and human war cries filled the communication channels. To the listening Kelhari, it sounded like madness. To the humans, it sounded like home. But the real battle began when the Queen ship entered the system. The massive creature moved with purpose, its surface launching thousands of smaller organisms while its main body headed directly for Kelhari Prime. Long-range scans revealed that the Queen ship was not just a command center, but a mobile factory, capable of consuming an entire planet and converting its mass into new swarm creatures. "All units, this is actual," Admiral Chen announced. "Execute Omega Protocol. Target the Queen ship with everything we have." What followed was a display of firepower that made the previous battles look like minor skirmishes. Every human ship in the system opened fire simultaneously, filling space with energy beams, missiles, and exotic weapons that most civilizations did not even know existed. The Queen ship's defenses were formidable. Its organic armor absorbed tremendous amounts of damage, while smaller creatures swarmed around it like antibodies protecting a vital organ. But the humans had planned for this. "Planet Cracker's report ready," announced the weapons coordinator. Chen watched the tactical display as the massive Queen ship pushed through the defensive fire. Its goal clearly the populated world below. She waited until it was exactly where she wanted it. Fire. The planet crackers discharged simultaneously, sending focused beams of energy that could split worlds directly into the Queen ship's core. The massive creature's death scream was audible across multiple radio frequencies as its internal structure collapsed. But humans had learned not to trust easy victories. Even as the Queen ship died, Dr. Martinez was analyzing its biological signature. "Admiral, I am detecting spore release from the Queen ship. It is trying to seed the system with reproductive material even as it dies." "Sterilization protocol," Chen ordered without hesitation. "Burn everything." The human fleet deployed weapons that turned entire regions of space into sterile zones. Fusion bombs, antimatter charges, and biological scrubbers eliminated every trace of organic material within a million-kilometer radius of the dying Queen ship. The Kelhari watched in stunned silence as their saviors systematically destroyed anything that might carry swarm contamination. Several of their outer moons were vaporized. The asteroid belt was completely sterilized. Even some of the space stations that had been evacuated were destroyed as a precaution. When the battle ended, the void swarm was utterly extinct. Not just defeated, but eliminated so thoroughly that no trace of their biology remained in the system. The humans had achieved something that most species would consider impossible: the complete eradication of an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. But victory came with a price that was only beginning to be understood. A week after the battle, representatives from every major galactic power arrived in Kelhari space. The Zentari Empire sent a full diplomatic delegation backed by a fleet of warships. The Nexus Collective dispatched their most advanced AI units. Even the ethereal Dominion materialized observers to witness the aftermath. Ambassador Sarah Chen, the Admiral's sister and a career diplomat, met with the galactic representatives in what had once been the Kelhari Confederation's main conference facility. The building had been damaged during the battle, but was still functional. "The Galactic Council demands an explanation," announced Emperor Vashti's representative, a proud Zentari noble whose name was unpronounceable to human tongues. "Humanity has deployed weapons that violate multiple treaties and protocols." Ambassador Chen smiled politely. "As I understand it, humanity was never invited to sign those treaties. We were considered too primitive to participate in galactic law." "That status is clearly outdated," observed the Nexus Collective's representative. "Your species possesses technology that rivals or exceeds that of the major powers." "We appreciate the recognition," Chen replied. "Perhaps it is time to discuss humanity's proper place in galactic civilization." The negotiations that followed would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. Humanity demanded full membership in the Galactic Council, with voting rights proportional to their demonstrated military capabilities. They also claimed permanent peacekeeping rights in Kelhari space and demanded access to trade routes that had previously been restricted to established powers. Most shocking of all, they offered to share their military technology with any species willing to sign mutual defense pacts. The implications were staggering. Within months, dozens of minor species that had been ignored or bullied by the major powers were signing agreements with humanity. In the rebuilt capital of Kelhari Prime, High Coordinator Zixthera met with Admiral Chen one final time before the human fleet departed. The city around them was a mixture of organic Kelhari architecture and new human-designed defensive installations. "Your people are safe," Chen told her. "The swarm is extinct and we have left enough weapons platforms to defend against any conventional threat." "And the price?" Zixthera asked. "You already know the price. Humanity has permanent basing rights in your system. We have access to your research facilities and trade networks. And when we call for assistance, you respond." Zixthera's antenna drooped. "We have traded independence for survival." "You have traded isolation for alliance," Chen corrected. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Coordinator. Your old friends abandoned you when you needed them most. Your new friends came from across the galaxy to save you. But you are not friends, are you? You are conquerors who happened to arrive before the other conquerors. Chen considered the accusation seriously. Perhaps, but we are conquerors who value our allies. The Kelhari Confederation will prosper under human protection. Your people will spread to new worlds, develop new technologies, create new art.